Brian here with Walnut Farm Bees. It's getting to be hot out today. It's the end of June, going into July. And one of the things you should be thinking about this time of year is managing pests in your colonies. So we're thinking about specifically the Varroa mite and how it might impact your colonies of bees. And I've had a number of customers ask for a little bit more information about this and information about the mite checks. I know there's lots of videos online, but I hope you can find this to be helpful for you as you manage your colonies. So the first thing to say is that there are a number of approaches to managing mites. It's not a lost cause. It's not something that's impossible to manage. Genetics, as far as bees are concerned, can help. I think it does. We use and sell queens that are grafted from VSH or Varroa sensitive breeder queens, and I think I've seen a difference in how often and how much I have to treat my colonies, but it's not a situation where there's a magic solution and you never have to treat unless you live somewhere with no one around you. But what I want to show you today is how to do a check on your colonies, because it's important to have that knowledge and know what the status of your colonies is. Also, after you treat for mites, you want to know if the treatment worked, or maybe if there was something wrong or something else happened. You can check after that. You want to check on a regular basis, and in particular the closer we get towards the end of the summer, towards fall, so that you can have healthy bees going into fall. We don't want to wait till fall to do something about it, because the mites impact the bees with their viruses and bacteria, which do not immediately disappear from a colony just because you treat the mite. So that's why we want to have clean, healthy bees going into fall, and then by the end of the year, clean bees going through winter, so that hopefully, if you've done everything well, you may not even have to treat in the spring. We did not have to treat in the spring. We still have checks of 0 showing up in our colonies. Last time we treated was late December for mites. And we usually have to do a late summer treatment as well. We always choose to do a winter treatment when the hive is broodless. And I'll talk more about that at the end of this video. If you have any questions, you can always contact us through our website, walnutfarmbees.com, or email walnutfarmbees@gmail.com. Hope this is helpful information for you. Okay, so today we're planning to do a mite wash, and I'm just really showing you how I do it and hoping that more people will get comfortable with doing this. It doesn't have to be perfect. You'll get better over time. But really it's good to have an idea of what's going on with your colonies in your apiary. So in front of me, I'll show you, I got this, I believe, at Home Depot or a similar store. Just a wash bucket that I use to shake bees into in order to get the half cup of bees, or roughly 300 bees that are used for an alcohol wash. I'm using this Easy Check mite container today, but I wanted to show you a new one to show you what they look like. You can get these at your local bee stores, probably Amazon as well. You can make one of these as well, but for $20 to $25 and last a long time. Really a simple way to do this. Different things to use for a mite wash. Most commonly used is the 70% rubbing alcohol. You can use Dawn dish soap and some other options, but I just still find this to be easier. And here I've got a half cup measuring cup. I've got a strainer, since sometimes I reuse the rubbing alcohol when I'm doing a number of colonies. I'll strain everything back through this so that there aren't any mites left before I do the next colony. And so this is really what I use. You'll notice there's a bee suit that I have on today, bee jacket. Looks fairly new because it is. Haven't worn it much. Just trying it out because it has sun protection in the back, and I guess as you get older you think about getting burned on your neck. And so I'm just trying this jacket out here today. And so what we'll do is we'll go into a colony in the apiary and check for mites. We've checked recently and have not yet this year come up with any mites in our mite counts, but I know that's likely to change in the near future. The farther we get into July towards August, especially as colonies surrounding us that other people might have, which maybe were brought from down south with high mite loads, or treatment free or something like that, or just naturally increasing in mite loads. Those will eventually start to impact our colonies here, and I want to be aware of when that happens and keep an eye on things. For our 300 bee count, what we look at is the standard, what they call an economic threshold or a warning threshold, is when you hit 6 mites in the wash. That's considered to be a 2% infection in that colony. Usually once I've hit a 3 in the wash, I'm going to monitor more regularly. Whereas right now, this time of year, I might be doing once per month. If I start to see mites, I'll monitor on a more regular basis. Because as soon as I have an apiary location that hits a 6 or close to a 6, I know that it's going to be time to address those mites in some way. We're going to take a look at this particular colony, do a mite check on it. We haven't done recently one on this colony, 8-frame colony. I took one honey frame out so we can move the frames around more easily. Two things we're trying to do. One is, if possible, if we can find the queen, I want to move her out of the equation so that we don't shake her into our mite check situation. That would be ideal. If we can't find the queen, then what we'll do is just double check, triple check the frame before we shake it, make sure that she's not on that frame. I'm looking for a frame that has a lot of brood on it, because we'll have younger bees on that frame. This one might be a decent candidate, but I'll set it to the side and take a look at some of the others, because the mites are going to be on those bees more likely, because they're trying to try to get into your brood. And so that's why we're looking for that sort of a frame to shake to get our sample of 300 bees, or half a cup of bees. So I'll just work my way through here, take a look at things. Oh, it's a real nice frame of brood though, as you can see. This is probably another good frame that can be used. I'm going to just keep going along and see if I can find the queen. She's laying good. Lots of eggs, lots of larvae, lots of capped brood. So overall, from the visual perspective, the colony looks great. But of course, we can't really get an idea of the mite status without doing a mite count. If you're seeing them visually on your bees, I can tell you things have gotten way beyond those thresholds, as far as like a 2% threshold. It's gotten much worse if you're at that stage in one of your colonies. So that's why it's not a great way to monitor your mites. Just simply looking for visual mites on bees would be a fairly bad approach. You would discover it fairly late. And as we'll look at some options for treatment, you'll better understand why it's so important to understand what's going on early in your colony. Still have not been lucky enough to spot the queen. Lots of evidence of the queen. She's definitely in here. We'll keep going. Alright, it's less likely she's going to be on these outer frames where we see a lot of honey, but she is laying up quite a bit in here. So we'll go back through putting some of these back, pick a frame, double check it before we go ahead and shake bees into our basin to collect a sample. Just hoping to get lucky one more time in spotting this queen. She's a newer queen. I don't know if she's marked. I always try to mark as many as possible, and if I see a queen, I mark them. Just makes things a lot easier. And some of these queens are fairly dark, so they can be more difficult to see. And this year's yellow marking does seem to be fairly nice and easy to see. Not so lucky so far with immediately spotting her. So I'm going to pick one of these last couple of frames. And I'll pick one of these to shake for mites. After you shake it into the basin, you can do another glance in there. Kind of double check that your queen is not in there. Especially if it's a fairly full frame of bees. Look at this other one yet. So we're heading into a spell of warmer weather. The last couple of days have been a nice break, but I think I'm feeling the sun and the humidity. And so we're down to this frame. In which I do not see the queen on this frame. Which you might be thinking, well, I haven't seen the queen on any frames. That's true. I'm doing a little bit more thorough of a check here before I give this one a shake. Alright, I definitely do not see the queen here. So I'm going to get my wash basin. Okay, so we're preparing the easy mite check. We're going to take our rubbing alcohol. You'll see 2 lines inside, and 1 line for, depending upon which the sample size is, you want to go up there to the line just above the strainer so that it'll wash the bees, catch all bees, dislodge any mites. I'll just put the cap on that for right now until we get our sample of bees. Okay, again, if you've not found the queen during your inspection, you want to do one final check on the frame before you shake it. Very carefully making sure she's not there. I'm going to turn this frame to the side to fit my container and do 1 or 2 quick shakes, firm quick shakes, since the younger bees are harder to dislodge. And we'll walk away for 30 seconds or so that the older bees in the foragers, drones, etc. can largely escape. We're looking for those younger nurse bees. Okay, now we're going to give it a shake, moving them into the corner so we can put half a cup of bees into our easy check. You can see the bees in there. I'm going to go ahead and scoop half cup of bees, roughly 300 bees. Dump them in there, the lid on as quickly as possible. Give that a quick shake. Take the rest of these bees, dump them back into the colony or at the front of the colony. Okay, so now got our sample of bees in here. We're going to swirl this around for a minute, making sure that we really agitate the bees in the rubbing alcohol, loosen any mites that might be on them. I'm going to make sure that we've done a good job agitating it, getting off any mites. We want to really gain a good understanding of what's going on in the colony. Let it settle down. Look into the bottom. And there's nothing to see. Make sure that you can see the bottom, and I'll show you what some mites look like on the bottom, but For this particular one, there's some debris in there, but no mites in this. No mites visible in this sample from this colony. Okay, so you figure out your mite load is high. What then? You have a number of different options. Different options based on preference, based on time of year, based on how bad things are in your colony. This is not everything here. I don't have Hopguard here. It's a little bit messy of a product, and it doesn't have as high of a success rate as some of the other products, so I don't have that here to show you. An older product, Apiguard, I don't have that here either, but I do have one of the Formic products. There's Mite Away Quick Strips, which was Formic's, or Max, which is Formic's first rendition, and then there's Formic Pro, which again is formic acid. I have that here. I have poured out of my bag, and you need to keep the label with it if you put it in a different container, but I have oxalic acid here. I have Apiguard strips here, and in a bulk quantity, in a single quantity, Apiguard, which is thymol here. There's another product yet, which is Life Var, which is wafers, that does use thymol a little bit differently. Doesn't have as much of a success rate, so I did not include that one either. But I did include these four products here, which are very common products for you to obtain and for you to consider using, depending upon the situation. So if it's the middle of if it's early in the summer where you're still collecting honey, which we're winding down pretty much, other than colonies that will go up to the northern mountains of PA. Other than that, around here, bees are starting to get on the clover now, which means they're going to slowly wind down. And the honey that we take, we'll take now, and we'll let the bees have some to get through the drier time of year that we tend to have in south central PA before considering any kind of feeding going into fall. So if the consideration was that you have honey super still on, your options are limited then. Formic can be used with honey supers on. It's formic acid, Apiguard, and oxalic acid are considered to be organic. The formic acid is approved for honey when honey is being collected. If you buy the most recent bags of oxalic acid, which is from a company, Apiguard, the approved company to sell oxalic acid, that is now also approved for honey supers on. But let me talk to you about why and when. So first of all, only one product, the Formic product, will go through capped brood and kill mites. The rest is going to kind of do a surface kill of any mice that are exposed, happen to be attached to the bees, which is fine, but a good many of the mice happen to be under those cappings. So for the rest of the products, we find that we have to either do an extended release to catch those mites through the life cycles of the brood, or many repeated applications, again for the same purpose, and I'm thinking more oxalic acid and the way it is used. So for that reason, that's one thing that Formic Pro and Mite Away Quick Strips, which is another Formic product, they do that very well. Going through the cappings, I will say this is a harsh product in terms of temperature and its impact on the bees. If you're going to use this, I'm not going to open this one up without respirator on. I'll shoot videos later this year when I use any of these products so you can see it in action, but I'm just going to tell you how it's being used right now. you're going to basically get a pad that comes out of here, and you're going to set 2 of them on top of the brood box. And again, you're going to want a respirator on for these products. And most of the products I think recommend either like eye protection or gloves, something like that when you're putting it on. You'll lay it on top, and you want to have a full entrance open. You don't want to do this on a nuke or a tiny weak colony, because again, it's a fairly harsh product on the bees. They also recommend putting an empty super or on-drawn super on top as well for during the treatment. 2 options from as far as Formic Pro. There's an option 1, which is a 14-day treatment. You put both strips on for 14 days. You can also do you can do 1 strip at a time, 10 days, and then another 10 or 11 days. And which, you know, the idea behind that is maybe it's easier on the bees, etc. Either way, I noticed that it kind of hits the bees pretty hard. If you have a queen with any issues, this will bring out those issues, as far as you hear about people losing queens with formic treatments. If the queen is healthy, I haven't seen that to be an issue. And if you follow the temperature guidelines, I believe it's 85 degrees. I'll just verify that with the, yes, 85 degrees, between 50 and 85 degrees. And I look for a day that's closer down towards 80. And you want a few days in that temperature range for the first few days of using Formic, so that it doesn't get too much for the bees. Very effective product. Again, it's not a 6-week product. It's fairly fast. Either the quick 14-day or the 20-day treatment option. So it does really hit the mites hard, which is good. Apiguard, which is a thymol-based organic product. If you had a single colony, you'd put one of these on. And if you have a lot of colonies, they send you a tub of it. You measure it out, put it on little cards, which goes up on top of the brood chamber. I usually use one of these shims, which are very helpful for during the winter for any emergency feeding anyway. Put a shim on, open up, pull back your Apiguard, put that on. It's going to release the gel, the smell of the gel. The bees are going to remove it, which kind of spreads it through the colony as they remove it. This is put this on for 2 weeks, then you put it on for another 2 to 4 weeks, ending to be more of a 6-week treatment. So it takes a little bit longer to hit the mites than Formic, but again, very effective treatment. And when I'm done going over all of these, I want to tell you about why and when, and you hear about people saying certain treatments don't work, and why that might be. Also got oxalic acid. 2 ways to treat with that. One being something called an oxalic acid dribble, where you're going to mix up a solution, a liquid solution of oxalic acid, and you're going to put it in a syringe, and you're going to drizzle it down seams of bees. Plenty of directions. I have some on our website for how to, walnutfarmbees.com, under the tips section, for how to do the oxalic acid dribble. Don't usually do that because of the number of colonies I have, and I'll explain later another reason why I don't do that. But if you don't have equipment, it's a really easy way to get started if you want to use oxalic acid. You can see here's the oxalic acid, kind of a white powder. And what I use, there's a number of different types of oxalic acid vaporizers, which you plug into a power source or a generator, which I often have to use. You will, usually these vaporizers will have some sort of a cap. Measure out the powder, put it into the cap based on the amount, a number of grams per brood chamber that's recommended on the label. And so I think its recommendation right now is like 2 scoops that you put into the cap. This is heated up. You definitely want to have full protection, eye and face mask protection for vapors when you're handling this stuff. Maybe gloves for the heat. So you'll have this setting somewhere like the top of a box. This is heated up. in the front of the hive or in the back. I usually drill a hole in the back of the hive, tap this, blows the vapor in there with one of these vaporizers, less than a minute, and it's done. I have the colony fairly closed up for a few minutes while that's taking place, but that immediately hits any mites that are, again, not under the capped brood. And so again, it's getting surface mites. So usually the recommendation is, if you want to use this like this time of year, fall, when there's still a lot of brood present, you're going to have to use multiple treatments, whether it's the dribble or whether it's the vaporizer. A lot of deer flies right now. Whether it's the dribble or the vaporizer, you have to do repeated treatments. And various recommendations for that. Things like every 5 days, 4 different times. Some people say more often than that. If you have a lot of colonies, that gets to be quite a bit. And so that is one downside. But when mites are exposed, it does a fairly good job of killing the mites. We've also got Apiguard. The rest, again, are considered to be organic. This is not considered to be organic. It is effective product. An effective product. I don't use this on any of my colonies that were going to be used for producing honey because of it not being an organic product. And you have a certain number of weeks, I think it's a month, that you have to wait from using this to putting honey supers on. So bear that in mind. Don't want this in contact with your colonies anytime near when you might be putting your honey supers on. I'll put a glove on because technically you're supposed to do that when you handle this stuff. But just showing you, this is a pack of 10. Get larger packs. I don't know if there are smaller packs of this or not. You want to take one of these apart. This is 2 of them. All right, you can take a knife or you can pull those apart. There's a little tab here where it can set down in the colony. This can set down in here. It works better with a toothpick or a nail or something like that, right? So it's right in between 2 frames, right in the middle of the brood. Every five frames of bees, you need one of these. So if I have an 8 or 10 frame deep that's full of bees, I'm going to need 2 of these for every deep. So I could do the math, but you can see that that does add up a bit. Effective stuff, but it does take 6 weeks. You can leave it on as long as 8 weeks. And but it is a 6-week treatment. The bees come into contact with those strips, they spread it through the hive. That's how it works as far as getting it through the hive to take care of the mites, and it's basically taking care of it over time. So it's catching things as they emerge from the brood. Again, not a fast treatment, but it is an effective treatment. So thinking about that, basically we have to think about, with these various treatments, we've got to think about what we're going to use based on the situation with the colonies and the time of the year. If you have mites that are really high in a colony, you do a mite check and it comes back with 15 mites or something, or 20 mites in the sample, that colony is in bad shape. And you want to hit those mites hard and fast. You don't want to wait 6 weeks to work that out. You might want to be using something more like Formic, or a dose of oxalic acid followed by another longer treatment. Because, as we mentioned before, the concern is not the annoyance of the mites biting the bees and being around the bees, but as much as it is those viruses and bacteria that they're transmitting to your colony, which then can be with the bees for some time. And certainly we're just getting close to July, but it always seems like fall and then winter just around the corner. So we're always looking towards that in managing healthy colonies, getting them through the winter, and this is an important aspect of it. So I'm going to keep checking my colonies. I don't have mites showing up in my mite checks right now, but I know I will eventually this summer. And as I get into July, I'll be watching more carefully. Get into August, I certainly expect that I'll start to see some then, and I'll monitor the levels. And I'll use an appropriate treatment for that time of year. If there's a lot of capped root, I'm going to look for cool days to use formic acid, and just to get the levels down before I use something like probably use Apiguard then, which is more of a 6-week treatment, and that'll take me to the end of September. And my bees will be relatively mite-free and certainly largely free of the viruses and bacteria that the mites carry, so that they're raising healthy bees going into fall as they prepare for winter. That sets me up for great success, as far as it's one of the key aspects of overwintering healthy colonies of bees. So I almost never use oxalic acid because it doesn't work well with captive brood during the summer. I do have obviously a nice vaporizer that I use. I use that later in the year, either late November or most often around late December, around after Christmas, around the winter solstice. And sometimes I'll hit every colony once in late November and then once in late December, since it doesn't take that long, and then that's it. So why do I do that? What's my concern there? So I trust the products that I'm using. I've tested the results after I've used them, as long as you use them appropriately. Keeping in mind, I can't blame a product like Apiguard and say it doesn't work because I put it on a colony that's in terrible shape. And remember, this takes 6 weeks, expecting it to bring down the mite level and the virus and bacteria load. You got to think about things. It takes a lot longer. You remove the mites, but the bacteria and the viruses are still around. And so I want to think about the way I use the products before I say that they don't work, and I have to think about the state of my colonies. And I don't mind a long-lasting product like Apiguard, like Apivard, as long as my colonies are not already at critical thresholds where they're about ready to crash. So my late treatments in the year are not because I don't trust the products. It's really because something else happens in fall. We have people who don't treat their colonies effectively. Sometimes it's just a lack of knowledge, lack of education. Things get busy, lack of time, or believe in not treating colonies. Those colonies crash in the fall. And my stronger, healthier colonies will rob them out, or they'll come and join one of my colonies. The bees will intermingle, those bees with high mite loads. And when I know of colonies in my area that do not get treated for mites, and when they crash, I always find right away, I know that those people lost their bees, they crashed because of mites, and mite counts go up in some of my colonies. And so I've got things well under control going into fall, but then I have something like that happens, and that can still impact me and impact my bees over the winter. So the best approach I found is healthy bees going into fall by the appropriate treatments, and then I just followed up with 1, sometimes 2 oxalic acid treatments in the winter there, late December, when there's almost no brood. And then 1 dose of oxalic acid vaporization. It cleans up any remaining mites. I don't have to treat for mites in the spring. I do mite counts to make sure, but I haven't treated since last December. And so it's a pretty good approach, works well. You'll notice on our website, walnutfarmbees.com, we've got a tips page. You can email me, walnutfarmbees@gmail.com. I don't have comments on for this video because it's such a controversial subject. I don't have time to weed through all of the comments, but you're welcome to reach out, chat with me if you have any questions or comments, or send us an email. Hope this is helpful. I know we're just going into July. It seems like maybe not that important, but trust me, it's a very important thing to start thinking about, start considering. Good luck with the rest of your summer, and hopefully you have healthy colonies going into the fall, going into the winter, going into 2023.